I generally give people like a couple areas to focus in. One is first, you have to have knowledge to make changes. You have to know what you're packing. And a lot of people don't even know. They just pile stuff together. So I always tell people, look, you have to have data to make decisions. So, weigh everything and put it on a spreadsheet and see how much weight you're actually taking. And then start to look for multiple use items. Do I need, I don't know, do I need 3 pairs of underwear and 4 pairs of socks? Can I make do with less? Is there something that can be dual use? Can I use my pot to eat out of? So I don't need a pot and a bowl. Can I use my pot to drink out of? So then I don't need a pot and a bowl and a cup, but it can do all with one.
Hello and welcome back to the Outdoor Minimalist podcast. I'm your host, Meg Carney, and I'm an outdoor and environmental writer and author of the book, Outdoor Minimalist, Waste Less Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking. The Outdoor Minimalist podcast has the goal to give listeners actionable ways to waste less hiking, camping, backpacking, and more during every step of their process. Your impact outdoors starts long before you hit the trail and goes beyond leave no trace ethics. You'll learn how to identify sustainable outdoor brands, how to ask hard questions regarding sustainability, and begin to shift and evolve your mindset to integrate minimalism into all of your outdoor pursuits. Have you ever been out on the trail during a backpacking trip and wished you just left one more thing at home? Or maybe you realized, wow, I really have not been using this book or extra charger or whatever it might be while I'm out here. Or maybe you're looking for new ways to lighten your load and you simply are struggling to identify what you actually need for your next adventure. Well, I've been there before, and if any backpacker claims that they haven't, well, I simply wouldn't believe them. Becoming ultralight or even a minimalist takes a lot of trial and error, both on and off the trail. And that's why in episode 146 of the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, we're exploring some of the transformative ideas from Glen Van Peski's new book, Take Less, Do More. Surprising life lessons in generosity, gratitude, and curiosity from an ultralight backpacker. Glen's book looks at how ultralight backpacking principles can teach us profound lessons for everyday life. We'll discuss how minimalism can simplify your journey and enhance your focus on what truly matters, the impact of practicing generosity in small, meaningful ways, the benefits of cultivating a heart of gratitude, and how embracing curiosity can push us beyond our comfort zones. Glen is known by the trail name Legend, and he's celebrated for his pioneering work in lightweight backpacking. A Californian who began his backpacking journey through his son's scout troop, Glen founded Gossamer Gear in 1998 to create ultralight backpacking gear. His innovations have been featured in major publications like Backpacker, Outside Magazine, and the New York Times. Now based in Bend, Oregon, he enjoys hiking, backpacking, and sharing his expertise through engaging presentations. So thank you for joining me on the Outdoor Minimalist podcast today, Glen. I am excited to dive a little bit deeper into the topic of ultralight hiking. So to start, do you mind overviewing just how you became interested in ultralight hiking and how exactly it fits into your life now?
Sure. Thanks, Megan. Exciting to be on the Outdoor Minimalist because it's kind of like my two favorite things in the world. So pretty excited about that. I got interested in, well, I guess early on. So when I graduated high school in 1976, I rode my bicycle across the country, and I could tell even then that lighter was better. So, I sewed some of my own gear and, cut the handle off my toothbrush or drilled holes in it, I guess. But more recently, I think my interest in ultralight hiking was kindled when my friend, who was also the scoutmaster of our son's Boy Scout troop at the time, Reed Miller, read Ray Jardine's original book, The Pacific Crest Trail Hiker's Handbook. And so in that book, he talks about the benefits of ultralight backpacking, and he had sewn his own gear and had gear lists in there that were like 8 pounds and change for base pack weight, which I remember could not even wrap my head around. But that got me interested. That and then being in scouts and just watching how the traditional gear was just so heavy on some of those boys, and some of them hadn't hit their growth spurt yet, so it's just a huge burden. So that kind of got me interested in ultralight backpacking.
And do you do a lot of ultralight backpacking still now?
Well, I mean, that's the only kind of backpacking I do. I just got back Monday from Buckskin Gulch, which is an annual trip I do, and my base weight for that hike was a little over 5 pounds. And I probably get out. It depends on the year, but 2, 3 months a year probably.
Nice, that's awesome. And when it comes to ultralight backpacking, something that I have experienced with the Outdoor Minimalist podcast is a lot of people assume that I'm an ultralight backpacker, which is not true. I'm a minimalist, but they're not necessarily always the same. And so, how do you think ultralight backpacking and minimalism overlap?
Well, there's definitely some overlap, and I always say I like to think in minimalist terms, but there's probably not enough evidence in my house to convict me of being a minimalist. I've done a much better job uh, in the backcountry of minimizing things than I have in my house, and part of that, there's a bunch of reasons for that, but um, I think there's a lot of crossover in terms of ultralight backpacking makes you realize how little you need to be happy, warm, and safe, and enjoying life in the outdoors. So, I might not want to live like that forever, but um, it helps show me what's possible. That more stuff doesn't make me happier, and also fills me with gratitude. I take for granted all the modern conveniences, as do most of us, probably. Water that you can drink coming out of faucets, probably in 3 or 4 places in your house. Not having to dig a hole in the ground every time you want to go to the bathroom. Nice, soft, cushy beds, hot water on demand, or water at any temperature you want, pretty much, which is just amazing. But we take it for granted until you've spent a couple of weeks sleeping in the dirt, and then gives you newfound appreciation for things that we tend to take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely a lot of areas where those concepts can overlap, but have you found that as you're trying to implement more of that minimalist mindset to ultralight backpacking, that there are any challenges or hangups that you have found?
Well, some of the common ones for people are packing your fears, wondering, what if. Either I tell people when we're doing gear makeovers, like, show me what's in your pack, and I can tell you what went wrong on your last trip. If you're carrying more food than you need to, okay, you got hungry sometime in your last couple trips, or your sleeping bag's way heavier. You probably were cold sometime on your last couple trips. Um, and I think the kind of the what if scenarios can add to pack weight. And also, I find that at home too. I'll want to throw something out, and Francie, my wife, will say, well, what if we need that? What if the one we have breaks? Or I don't know. There's a million reasons, what ifs you can come up with for reasons for hanging on to stuff. Of course, I always say, well, what if that happens and then we've held on to so much stuff that we can't find it and we end up buying it again? But that doesn't hold much water with my wife.
What about that concept of ultralight gear doesn't necessarily last as long? So I think a lot of times the minimalist approach would be investing in the most durable equipment versus the lightest equipment.
That can definitely be a factor. Um, and it depends on, how you treat your equipment. I tend to be very careful with my equipment so it can last a long time. But obviously, the durability isn't the same as something that weighs so much more. I hiked with a guy uh, who was a I think he still is a winemaker in Castro Valley, California. And, I hiked on the PCT with him for a couple of weeks and I never saw him abuse the gear, but his gear just got holes in it and wore out. And, just so if you're someone that, is not naturally careful with stuff, well, yeah, you want to make different choices. And definitely the sustainability is a factor, not having stuff that you throw away a lot. But, I have some, I'm always optimizing course, but I still have a pair of fleece socks that I bought for my first backpacking trip with my son when he was in Boy Scouts, and he's 38 now. So those are very old socks.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes there's those staple pieces of gear or clothing that you just hold on to forever, and they're just gonna last the testament of time, no matter what you do. And so I guess transitioning to your book, you talk a lot about ultralight backpacking in that book, and I'm sure it was influenced by a lot of your experiences. But one of the reasons why I was interested to talk to you is because you also explore the ideas of generosity, gratitude, and curiosity. So, why were those so important for the focus of the book and telling that story?
Well, I think in my journey, at least, those are things that have either come out of or been accentuated by my backpacking experiences, going ultralight, and then transferred over to other areas of my life. So they just seemed they're not the only topics I discuss, but kind of the main three captures a lot, I think, of the stories and lessons in the book.
Yeah, and for listeners that might not be familiar with your work, do you mind just overviewing kind of the premise of your book and what inspired you to write it?
Sure. The subtitle of the book, the titles Take Less, Do More: Surprising Life Lessons on Generosity, Gratitude, and Curiosity from an Ultralight Backpacker. So the premise is, as I worked over the last almost 50 years to lighten my load for outdoor adventures, I've realized that the lessons I was learning through that process were also spilling over into the rest of my life. And so along the way, I met and became a business partner with John Mackey, the co-founder of Whole Foods Market. He invested in my backpacking company. He actually saved it when I was going to close it down. And he does hikes every year. He invites people from a wide range of backgrounds that are good company on the trail, basically. And so we'd be hiking along and he'd say, Glenn, this probably started 10 years ago. You should write a book. And I replied to him the first time that I thought there were already good books on ultralight backpacking out there and I didn't need to add my 2 cents to it. But John has many admirable qualities and persistence is one of them. So year after year, as we hiked, he'd say, hey, how's that book coming? And he said, you should write a book and I will write the foreword. And so eventually I thought, as the years went by and then he got his friends started to chime in. So on a trip, I wouldn't be hiking next to John. I'd be hiking with one of his friends and they start bugging me about writing a book. And so I figured, it'd be good. There's probably not too many people that have John Mackey offering to write the foreword of their book. And I probably ought to take advantage of that before he changes his mind. So I finally decided on kind of applying the lessons of ultralight backpacking to the rest of life. And that gave me something that I was interested in doing.
It's always kind of funny how sometimes the people around us are a big influence in the things that we pursue. So it's great that you have that support in moving towards writing this book. And if we take those three like primary pillars of generosity, gratitude, and curiosity and break them down, so we can start with generosity. Would you be able to give some tangible examples of how pursuing those things are accomplished and how you actually ended up applying those off of the trail as well?
Sure. I was brought up uh, on the importance of generosity. My mom never gave us a lecture, but she just demonstrated that and how she noticed needs and quietly and anonymously most of the time took care of those. And so as I lowered my pack weight and I started sewing my own gear, I put the plans for free on the internet, so that anyone could make their own. It was never my goal to make a business out of it or to make any money out of it. In fact, I've never taken a salary from Gossamer Gear. Um, and I think often when you're in the backcountry, you're in a situation where you people tend to be more generous. You tend to share what you have. You meet someone, you're a long way from anywhere. Um, and so you don't figure it's someone else's job to take care of something. You meet someone and they didn't pack enough food. Everyone in your group kind of ponies up a food bar or something to help get them to the next resupply. Um, so I think that happens in the backcountry, and that's being generous has resulted in so much richness in my life. Um, I had a book I recently read, Infectious Generosity by Chris Anderson, the TED Talk guy, was super interesting about how the impact of being generous. Um, they figured there are multiple studies that show that most people think that to be happy they need about a 20% increase in salary, and different studies come up with different numbers, but basically if I had just a little more money, then I'd be happy. But studies also show that when you get that money, the happiness doesn't last very long because that's your new standard, so you adapt to that, and then you think, well, if I just had a little more money, then I'd be happy. And they did these studies on generosity that showed that people who were generous experienced a happiness roughly equivalent to a doubling of salary, which was staggering to me, and also found that it didn't go away with time. So it wasn't like you got used to that generosity and it didn't give that happiness kick anymore. That continued on. So I think there's some real, benefits to your personal well-being and happiness from being generous. One of the ways we've built that into our lives is um, by creating a gratitude fund, or tithing fund. You can call it anything you want, but basically we take a set percentage of our income and put it in this separate account. And so when needs come across our paths, we don't have to consider whether we have money to meet those. We just need to figure out if those have our name on them. And so this way we're intentionally making sure that we're taking a good portion of what we've been blessed with and making using that to bless others. And we started 5% of our after-tax income, and now it's a big chunk of our pre-tax income. As far as gratitude, there's nothing like ultralight backpacking to make you appreciate, kind of as we discussed before, all the conveniences that we take for granted. So it kind of resets what your expectations are of life, when you're out there with 5-pound base pack weight, sleeping on the ground and, climbing over logs and walking through rain. Boy, really, you don't look at your car the next time when you can get in there and go somewhere without hardly lifting a finger. One thing I read on gratitude once that changed the way I thought on this was a post by David Epstein, and he talked about a matrix of things that we want and things that we have, things that we don't want, and things that we don't have. And so most people, we're grateful for the things that we want, that we have. That's pretty normal. I think in our society, a lot of time is devoted to things that we want, but we don't have, or things that we think we want, or it seems like everyone else has on their Instagram feeds or whatever. And of course, there's huge industries built on, giving us ads to show us what we should want and don't have. But he says we miss a huge opportunity for gratitude in considering things that we don't have that we also don't want. And there are so many opportunities. You can look at hardships other people are going through, and they could be people, or even just in the news, people in other parts of the world. And it's, you may think your life is stressful and you've got deadlines and things like that, or you've got relationship issues. And then you see someone living in a tent in Sudan or in a bombed out building in Gaza and go, yeah, maybe my life's not as bad as I think. And even less extreme things, just like you have friends that just got cancer or things like that. It's like, wow, I don't have that. I'm happy about that. So that's a great source of gratitude. And then curiosity, I think as an engineer, I'm kind of wired that way, but I'm always looking for a way to do things better. Gosh, how could I improve on this? And that tinkering with my gear has led to accidentally starting a gear company, Gossamer Gear, and I'm still always looking for refining things. How could I do things better? Um, and that curiosity about things, and part of this is creating margin in your life, so you have the time, energy, and money to engage with others. If we're so focused on all the stuff we're doing and projects we're trying to finish and contracts we're trying to land or whatever, we can sometimes not notice what's going on with other people. We don't notice, like, oh, that guy seems like he's unhappy. I wonder what's going on there. I wonder if I should ask. Or I don't know if I'm the only one. You're out driving, you go by a car on the side of the road, and you think, I mean, I think, oh gosh, I should probably stop and see if they're okay. But then it's like I look at my watch, like, I got to get to my next appointment or whatever. I'm sure they're fine. Someone else will stop. Um, Whereas if we build in that margin, we have time to notice things and time to engage with people. And that's where the magic happens, where we can say yes to things and find things out that we can help make things better.
Yeah, a lot of those examples I noticed were coming a lot from your personal life. But have you found yourself applying those to career aspects or pursuits as well?
Yeah, I mean, my career was in engineering. Worked at my entire life up until fairly recently, and yeah, the same things apply. I mean, I think I had a successful career because I paid attention to things like relationships and handwritten notes, and noticing what was going on with people, and engaging with that, noticing things that other people hadn't. I used to enjoy. We'd have a developer come in on a project all upset about something, and say, well, we can't redesign it. It won't work like that. And them not knowing that, I'd been an engineer in the early part of my career on the other side of the counter. Instead of working for the city, I'd been designing things. So I'd grab a piece of tracing paper and put it over their plans and go, well, what if you move this here, move that there? And they'd go, oh, well, yeah, I guess that could work. They just didn't want to do the work and make the effort. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Adventuring plans on your calendar? Remember to grab your Lava Linens travel towel on your way out the door. Founded by a mother daughter team, Lava Linens crafts durable, luxurious travel towels as a more sustainable and better performing alternative to microfiber and cotton towels. Powered by flax, hemp, and tencel, they're designed to be by your side for years to come. Use the code Outdoor Minimalist for 15% off your next order. So if we look at those three pieces and apply them to ultralight backpacking, which a lot of these are stemming from, I think there is a lot of overlap, like you mentioned earlier in this conversation, with minimalism. So do you think those three kind of play into how you define minimalism in your life as well?
I think so. I mean, I think, having less stuff, which is probably, kind of a crude or inexact definition of minimalism, is, having less stuff at some level. Um, I just saw um, a fascinating reference to a study that I haven't been able to check out yet, from Joshua Becker on um, the stress caused by clutter. Um, Now, my wife would argue with that, but I think having less stuff, practicing minimalism, really helps create that margin, of money, time, and energy. Money because you're not wasting your money buying stuff that you don't need, or you're just going to throw out, or you're going to store somewhere and forget about it. Um, and then energy because you're not focused on chasing all the cool ads on your Instagram feed because you're not going to buy them. So um, and you don't there's so many things you don't need to worry about maintaining if you don't have the latest model or things like that. You have something that works and that's enough. And then time, you're not spending time comparison shopping or maintaining all the stuff you have, fixing broken stuff. So yeah, I think there are applications for minimalism. Now, I would like to think that uh, maybe it's a, and maybe this is just to justify my front country experience, but I think a component of minimalism that is can be overlooked is, does do you own your stuff or does your stuff own you, basically? And the worry and energy that the stuff takes. People are always surprised. We own nice stuff, but we recognize it's just stuff. We have a Sprinter van because Francie's really not a hey, let's go sleep in the dirt tonight kind of gal. That she can do it because she can do anything if she sets her mind to it, or if you tell her she can't. Um, but it's not her, doesn't bring her joy. So we have a Winnebago Revel, Sprinter van, fully outfitted, so we can get back in the backcountry what I like, and but sleep in a soft bed and take a shower every other day, what she likes, and we lend that out to people. And when you tell it, people are like, well, that's a really expensive, complicated piece of equipment. What happens if they break it? It's like it's just stuff. It's so we strive to, I guess in my mind, if I have something that I'm not willing to lend to someone, then I'm worried about it, and that means it has a hold on me rather than just being a tool. So that's kind of a guideline I use.
Yeah, that is an interesting perspective. Like the hold our, I guess, like material items can have on our consciousness and the way we interact with other people and just our day to day life. So that's an interesting concept to think about. And I'm trying to think of how to phrase this next part. So, although a lot of these concepts kind of originated from the trail, they are kind of being applied to your everyday life. But if someone were to say go backpacking this weekend, how do you think they could apply it to their next trip?
Well, lightening your load. Um, I generally give people like a couple areas to focus in. One is first, you have to have knowledge to make changes. You have to know what you're packing. And a lot of people don't even know. They just pile stuff together. So I always tell people, like, you have to have data to make decisions. So, weigh everything and put it on a spreadsheet and see how much weight you're actually taking. And then start to look for multiple use items. Do I need I don't know, do I need 3 pairs of underwear and 4 pairs of socks? Can I make do with less? Is there something that can be dual use? Can I use my pot to eat out of? So I don't need a pot and a bowl. Can I use my pot to drink out of? So then I don't need a pot and a bowl and a cup, but it can do all with one. Um, so yeah, look for multiple use items, and then try and find the lightest items that you can. Instead of taking a nice steel pot, take a nice titanium pot that's lighter, or aluminum. Um, and then there's when you get more advanced, you can get pretty light just on kind of exercising those principles in an iterative process and taking advantage of the more advanced materials that are still strong but lighter. But at some point, you're probably going to have to pick up additional skills to go lighter. Get comfortable with um, rigging up a tarp instead of a tent. So that'll save you some weight, but it's a little more complicated. You need some additional skills. So yeah, it's a process, but the first step is to figure out what you have and how much it weighs.
Yeah, I love that planning piece before a trip, though. I think it can be really fun, especially if you're going with multiple people to kind of like compile all the information, like what things can we share, all that sort of stuff, which I can also see that being really overwhelming for someone who maybe is transitioning to ultralight backpacking or just getting into backpacking right out of the gate. If you've enjoyed listening to this interview and any of our other interviews on the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, we'd love to hear from you. One super easy and free way to support our content is by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. We thank you for listening to and supporting our work so that together we can create a better outdoor space as we recreate. So do you have any resources that you would recommend to people that are interested in learning more about ultralight backpacking?
I direct people to Mike Clellan's book, Ultralight Backpacking Tips, I think. It's super easy, just a bunch of little ideas and great drawings on, things you can think of and implement. So I think that's a good text for. And then, hike with people that have lighter packs than you, because you can learn from them. So that's always a good thing to do.
Yeah, I'll make sure to link to that book in the show notes. And yeah, that's my favorite way to learn pretty much any new outdoor activity or get better at it is surround yourself with people who are more advanced, because usually they want to talk about that stuff and they usually have quite a bit of knowledge to share. So that's a great tip. And if we are talking about your book, then if you had to choose one specific takeaway for people who decide to read your book, what would it be?
That's going to depend on the person, because everyone's looking for something different. And let's face it, I mean, the book I've not discovered some magic formula to make your life better. There's not a lot of new things here that no one's thought of before. But what I do know is that, people hear things in different ways and at different times. So someone can say something a certain way and a person might not hear it because it's not phrased in a way that they can accept it, or it's just not the right time in their life. So, my hope is that there have been times in my life where someone has said something to me that has been an inflection point in my life. It's changed the way I thought about something or made me think about something I hadn't been thinking about before and really changed the way I did life. And so it's my hope that the words I've chosen in the book and the stories I've told and the timing of the book kind of coincide for some people to give them some tools to put more joy, purpose, and meaning in their lives.
I love that. So if listeners want to learn more about you and get their hands on a copy of one of your books, how can they do that?
The easiest place is to go to my website, glenvanpeski.com. You could sign up for the newsletter, but there's all sorts of information about me. There's information on the book. There's all sorts of tips and tricks on, like random things like road trip books. Obviously, there's backpacking information, things on first aid and food planning, and all sorts of videos on what's in my pack. You can actually see the stuff that I carry when I go out. So all sorts of resources at glenvanpeski.com.
And if listeners want to learn more about Gossamer Gear and the offerings there,
head over to Gossamer Gear. You can sign up. Gossamer Gear has a very good blog post, blog that comes out. And you can check out the latest offerings for gear there.
Great. I'll be sure to include the links to all that in the show notes so they're easy to find. But do you have anything else that you would like to add that maybe we missed?
To sum it up, I just tell people, work hard, be nice, stay curious.
Nice. Simple. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book, on YouTube, or subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com. For even more updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.